And if you've got a Bible, we want to invite you to grab it out. And we're going to look at Luke chapter 2, a very familiar passage for a lot of you as we consider this holiday season with Christmas and everything else that's going on. And so we just want to encourage you throughout the season. One of my, though, least favorite things, one during the holiday season, but really just any time, and I don't know about you, but it always takes me some adjustment when I travel. Like that first night of sleep in a hotel, it's never fun. It's like weird because you're not in your own bed. And let's be real, I hurt worse after the first night of sleeping somewhere else. And let's be real, that's one of the worst parts even of the holidays. When you like go somewhere, you don't stay in your own bed, and you love the hospitality, you love the season, you love the nostalgia of all the things, and the hospitality is great, but there's something about just not being at your own place. Not in your own bed. Let's be real, you don't control often thermostat when you go to other people's houses, even though you may want to, because they just don't ever turn on the heat or cool depending on what side of the year it is. And you're just like, oh my gosh, it's 100 degrees in here, or it's vice versa, and it's like 30 degrees below zero, and it's like it feels like you're outside at the same time for whatever reason, and so you don't have that control of things. The bathroom's different. You get up in the middle of the night, and you hit your shin on the toilet or whatever because you're just not used to being there. There's those things that are just about not being at your own place. It smells different. It looks different. I remember growing up, going to my grandparents often during the holiday season, and the smells would be like mothballs and other things because I felt like that's the way it used to be. I don't know, y'all, if you grew up now and you're younger, you probably don't know anything about that, but that's how it was for us growing up. And but you loved them anyways. And so there was just all these different things. It's just nothing that was being home for Christmas and that place of your own thing, your own bed. But it's interesting, that's exactly where Mary and Joseph found themselves. In an unexpected place, not in the comfort of their own home and their own place. And this wasn't just for one day or two, but they were out of town for quite a while. They were uprooted from their home in an occupied place of not occupied them, but another empire that came in and occupied where they were. And they were forced to travel to a place that really one of the most uncomfortable times. Mary's 9 months pregnant. You imagine that? If you've ever been pregnant before, I haven't, but I've watched it. It looks pretty uncomfortable, I got to be honest with you. And so she finds herself at this place of discomfort. Joseph's there, probably exhausted as they're traveling. In the midst of this moment, they're walking to a place that they didn't choose at a time that really wasn't convenient, and they probably didn't want to anyways. And just as we talked about last week, and we looked at the issue of disappointment and how we could even still worship and even trust God in the midst of disappointment, this week, I believe, is going to teach us, I hope, that God does some of His best work in uncomfortable places. And maybe you're even in an uncomfortable season. You're in an uncomfortable moment where you thought you had everything planned, or it seemed like everything was going to be right, but you find yourself in this season due to life circumstances or other things, and it feels really uncomfortable. You feel disconnected, maybe you even feel uncertain, maybe you even feel like you have no control over your situation. And we find ourselves, and I believe the good thing is we're going to be able to look at the story that we call the Christmas story, the birth of Christ, and I believe it's going to hope to give us some help about how maybe we see our situations when sometimes we feel like maybe we don't have control, or we're not in the place where we feel like we've got it all together, or we feel like maybe it seems like everybody else has control of our life instead of us. And so it's those moments that I want to bring us to this passage in Luke chapter 2. So if you got a Bible, grab that out. Luke chapter 2, verse 1 is where we're going to begin. And I want to encourage you to maybe write down this statement. It's God loses your loss of rights for His glory. Now, none of us today go, I'd like to give up my rights, right? We don't look forward to giving up our rights. And let's be quite frank, if we have a thought that somebody's going to take our rights, what do we start to do? We fight for our rights. And when our rights are taken away, there's a problem. And yet we're going to see in the story where even in the loss of the rights of this young couple, God did some of his greatest works. And I believe sometimes that can even happen in our own lives as well. Because we often want to fight for our rights instead of think that maybe God's doing something greater even in the midst of our loss of what we think were our rights to begin with. And so let's look. Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. This we're going to read to begin with. It says, at this time, the Roman emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for the census. So just so you understand the context of some things that are going on right now, Rome is ruling. They have taken over this area. It is ruled by them and their laws. And Israel was meant to obey in the midst of that moment. Mary and Joseph had zero say in what was going on because this was an inconvenient time, and yet they're commanded not from what they want to do. They're in the midst of a people that are in oppression and struggle, and they're called to go give a census. There was no mail-in paper. There was no QR code. There was no sign up line and go do it. It was you got to go to the place where you were born to register for the census so that then you could be counted in the census. And you think about, you imagine, ladies, you're 9 months pregnant. Do you like to travel at 9 months pregnant? You don't even like to go 10 minutes down the road when you're 9 months pregnant. Much less, could you imagine going hours away? And much less than that, on a donkey? That's an uncomfortable ride. And that's where they were. That's where they found themselves. No rights, no control. And Luke, I believe, is writing in this moment to emphasize the political weight. Because I believe he wants us, as well as to see what was happening here, that we would feel the tension of a world that was controlled by a foreign power. Not by the choice of the people, but by invading armies and the control of Rome. And yet they're supposed to just kind of get along. And these people in this time, they longed for deliverance. They longed to be out of the oppression that they found themselves in. They lived under the oppression, stripped of any autonomy. They had no rights in their own, only what the Roman government told them to do. And that was the story of where Jesus came, of the story he comes into. So much so that Paul wrote this in Galatians chapter 4, verse 4. It says, when the right time came, everybody say the right time? And when the right time came, God sent his son, born of a woman, subject to the law. Even in the midst of this, in God himself, in the form of Jesus, came, human flesh, comes on the scene, and is subject even then to the law. All the rights that he was demanded, that he could demand, creator of the world, you think he should have had some greater rights? You think he could have demanded some things? Since, by the way, he created all of us. If I'm the creator, I think I should get a say. But here's Jesus, subjected himself even to the rule of law of that time, and came to change the world. And sometimes I believe it's even in the greatest loss of rights that God can do his greatest work. for Mary and Joseph. What looked like limitations did not disqualify them, but instead it set the stage for God's glory to be revealed among us. And that is a powerful reality of the birth of Christ. That it came in at one of the most unopportune times, when the world was full of oppression and suppression. Then Christ makes himself known. And what about you? Have you ever found yourself in the midst of a situation, or maybe in life, where you felt powerless? Maybe where you felt overruled at every turn? Maybe even overwhelmed. Maybe for you it was in the midst of a job shift. Maybe you're even in the midst of that right now, or you're anticipating one. Maybe not even one you planned for, but happened to you, so you feel like you have lost all control. Maybe a circumstance that's forced your hand that you didn't anticipate. Or maybe you find your life in the midst of a tailspin of something you didn't choose. But the good news, I believe, for all of us is God doesn't need ideal conditions to do supernatural work. And that's what I want us to see through this. God does some of his greatest work in the midst of the least ideal situation and conditions. It's when it's least expected he shows up his greatest ways. He uses what's a loss of rights, or what looks like loss of control to us, to reveal his righteous plan. And that's what he's in the midst of doing right here in the midst of this moment. Because we often just see it. It's a census. Yeah, that's inconvenient. But you need to know it's something so much greater than this. We're going to see in just a moment, it's a fulfilling as well, too, of a prophecy that was prophesied way before anybody ever anticipated a census. Before there was ever a Quirinius or a Pharaoh or a Herod. It was far greater. So we see that first thing, that, hey, even God can use our greatest loss of our rights for his glory. But the other thing you can need to know, I believe, is God has a journey for you. This season, God has a journey for you. And so let's continue to read in this passage in verse 4 and see about this journey that I believe will come down as well for us. See, because Joseph, it said, was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting a child. We already talked about the circumstances of that just in itself. A young teenage girl, pregnant, out of wedlock, with a child that was conceived of the Holy Spirit. And you got to explain all these things. But Joseph had the opportunity. He could have put her away. That was what he was thinking. But instead, he gets a visitation from a dream from an angel to take Mary as his wife. And so he chooses to say, hey, I'm going to trust God. Even when others may question it, I'm going to trust God. Mary surrendered and submitted. Let it be so. I'll be the servant, your servant, Lord. And here they are. They've got to go to Bethlehem. Bethlehem is not a vacation. This is not Panama City. This isn't New York City. This is not the place you'd want to go to for the Christmas holiday. It wasn't easy. This was about a 90-mile journey through rugged terrain. Pregnant. It'd be truly, I believe, brutal. Mary most likely in the midst of this wanted to eat, but yet even vomit at the same time. Not able to get comfortable, even sitting. So physically, emotionally, spiritually, disorienting, an unbelievable moment and trip that they would ever anticipate taking. This journey wasn't convenient. It wasn't easy. It wasn't expected. But it was necessary. Bethlehem was prophesied in Micah chapter 5, verse 2. You can go fact check it there. That Christ would come to Bethlehem. And we could almost think like, good night, look, the Lord, is he punishing Mary and Joseph? Like 90-mile journey? Couldn't it have been easier than this? Like there's been some other way? But there was a prophecy. There was promises to be fulfilled. And God wasn't punishing Mary and Joseph. He was positioning them for what he was doing and going to do. And let's be real, when we find ourselves in the midst of problems, in the midst of a journey that's uncomfortable, what do we tend to do? Complain. The trip's long. Like, let's be real, what's the first thing your kids, when you're on a trip, what do they ask you? Are we there yet? Right? Are we almost there? I got to go to the bathroom. There's all these things. We begin to get disoriented. We're angry. We're frustrated. The trip's taking longer, whatever else it may be. But it's interesting. I think sometimes it's in the journey that God's doing his greatest work. It's in the discomfort. So much so that I want to read this passage. It's going to come on the screen. But Romans 5, verses 3 and 4 says this. We can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials. For we know they help us. Everybody say help us. Develop what? Endurance. And endurance develops strength of character. And character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. So the next time you face an unexpected journey, a struggling situation, maybe a place where you find yourself and like, God, I didn't choose to go here. God may be positioning you exactly where you need to be for the great things that he wants to do in and through you. Because God has a plan. God has a journey for you. And yes, often it's in unexpected places and unexpected ways. But sometimes it's even in those unexpected places. He's leading us away from some of the things that may keep us from his plan as well too. It's those moments when you've got your Google Maps on. Have you ever had that moment? And it reroutes you. And then you start to get frustrated about it and you get angry. And you're like, my God, I know exactly where I'm going. Why am I listening to this thing? But then it reroutes you. And it reroutes you because there was traffic or there was an accident. And it gives you a rerouting and you realize it saved me from a problem. Now, granted, there's sometimes it doesn't know all, okay? It's not God itself, so don't trust it all the time. Yes, there's so many times, though, it can show us what? The red line ahead, which scares us to death. It brings every, traffic controller to, a level of anxiety none of us can imagine. But it helps us to see things. It helps us to see what's ahead. But even in that, it can reroute us. And for Joseph and Mary, the route to Bethlehem probably looked ridiculous on paper. But it was the only road to the fulfillment of the prophecy from Micah. Listen, God's detours are never mistakes. They're mercy. There's mercy and grace, I believe, to us. Because let's be real. How many of y'all, if you looked back at your lives, that now you see moments where God detoured you along the way? And you're thankful for it. Because let's be real. Some of you wouldn't be sitting next to the spouse that you're sitting next to right now if God didn't derail some things in your life. You would have had the mistake sitting next to you, and that'd been bad. God may have derailed moments in your lives for different things. Or the job that you thought, this is the perfect job for me. It's the best job. I'm going to make so much money, and it's going to be amazing and awesome. And then you didn't get the job. And you're like, how did I miss it? What was going on? Listen, this was the perfect thing for me. But then God made a way. Or you were living comfortably in Florida, having a great time, and your name was Tim Young, and God brought you to Alabama. He's in the sound booth, by the way. He didn't expect it. Ask him, He'd have never expected to be here. God brought him here, and I believe he brought him here on purpose, and I'm thankful for him. But God often takes the things that look like detours and does some of his greatest work. And that's the beautiful thing about God and about who he is. Listen, for you, you may feel displaced, even unsettled. But yet God is still at work. Maybe there's a job change that's looming for you. Maybe there was a move in the past, or maybe there's a move that's to come. Maybe there's even been a shift in a relationship or a season that feels unfamiliar. But here is the truth that I want us all to know. God is not waiting for you to feel comfortable before he moves. He's working in your discomfort. It's often in sometimes the most uncomfortable places that he does his greatest work, that he's positioning you. Because God has a journey for you and for me, just as he did for Mary and Joseph. And the last thing that I want us to know this evening is God has a place for you as well too. If we continue to read verse 6 and 7, God has a place for you, and I want you to see what God was doing in this moment. It says, while they were there in Bethlehem, the time came for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger, because there was no lodging available for them. Many translations says there was no room for them in the inn. The Savior of the world entered history through a doorway that nobody wanted to open. There was no room. But let's be real and just consider for a moment. What earthly place could have ever been perfect for a God child? There's not one. So naturally, there was no room. Mary and Joseph weren't rejected. They were redirected. What we see as rejection actually might be God's redirection for us. What we may feel like there's a place, there's no room, there's no doorway, God may making a greater door. I believe it's so incredible that God would enter the way he did. Not in a palace, but instead in a manger. Among the cattle and the lowly. And we'll see over the next few weeks the visitors that came, that were not the government officials, but instead the lowly shepherds. And often I believe in our own lives, sometimes we can feel like we've been put in a place where maybe we feel less than, or we feel like this is not really the place we're supposed to be. One of the great Christmas movies, many of you may know this movie, watched it before, but there's the movie Elf. Has anybody ever seen the movie Elf before? Okay. Some of you can probably quote it, and we'll ask for you to do that after the service, not right now. But in Elf, Buddy grows up, if you remember, in the North Pole, but he never really fit in. He was too big. He was too loud. He was too human. And why? Because the reality was he wasn't made for that world. And I think the truth is as well for us is that likewise for believers, there's an eternal being. that is as an eternal being living in a temporary place, we don't always feel like we fit. And I don't believe we're supposed to. I love what Hebrews chapter 11 says. In verse 13 it says, all these people died still believing what God had promised them. They did not receive what was promised, but they saw it all from a distance and welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. Obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. If they had longed for a country they came from, they would go back. But they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. And that is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, and He has prepared a city for them. And there's so much I could go into this. There's a whole nother sermon here. But in the reality of what I want all of us to know, and the truth that I want you to see, is that there should be a level of discomfort. But this is not our final. We are just passing through. We are, as it says in that passage, nomads in a strange land, and we're looking for a better place. And there is a better place to come, and it is in heaven with the Creator of the world. And one day, if we know Jesus, we will experience that. And right now, we continue to look for a better place. Now, God has placed us now in this place, not by mistake. In a place where we'd make much of Him, that we would live on mission, we would share the gospel with others. We would worship Him with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And we would love our neighbors the way Christ loved us. And we would love each other just the way Christ loved us. Because that will be our testimony to the world, that we belong to Him. And that our future home, a better place, is with Him. And so I encourage us all this season that we would know that what sometimes looks like a loss of rights, God can use for His glory. That God has a pace and a plan for you in your life. And even when sometimes you feel like you may be in the wrong place, God is leading you to the right place. Listen, Mary and Joseph, they weren't in the room they expected to be in. But I believe they were in the room that God intended for them to be in. So for you, I want to challenge you. Do you feel like, maybe you feel like you don't really fit in? Maybe you feel like you're out of place. Maybe you're on the outside of something that you thought you'd be on the inside of. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Because so was Jesus. So was Mary and Joseph. And so as well, I believe, are all of God's people. And the question isn't, is there room for me? It's, is God preparing the room? And He always is. God is preparing a room and a place for us. And one day we'll get to experience that. That if you know Him, we'll get to experience that all together. So God had a unique plan and a unique story. And the reality and the truth for all of us as individuals here this evening, your journey will often look different than mine. Our journeys will each look different because God has a unique plan for you. Mary and Joseph, they didn't pick the journey that they would be on, but they chose to be obedient in the midst of it. And they turned and they trusted They trusted God to take them exactly where they were meant to be. They chose in obedience. And because of that, God did great things through them. And listen, your life right now may not look like the way you'd planned it or the way you imagined it. But unexpected journeys still lead to Bethlehem. And Bethlehem always leads to Jesus. It always leads to Jesus. So as you're here this evening, as we consider these things this evening, maybe for you, as you consider this, not worrying about who's around you or anybody else, but just you. Is there anywhere you maybe feel displaced? What expectations have you had that feel like they've been crushed? Where do you feel like maybe there's no room? And also, what journey has God been calling you on that you've been resisting? Have you been running from and resisting God and what He wants to do in your life? And my prayer tonight is that we would choose to be obedient and walk in His plan. So if today maybe the message found you in an unexpected season where you feel out of place, unsure, maybe even unsettled, this would be the moment that you would meet God in. That you would have a moment to have a heart-to-heart. Time of response in just a second. Maybe you need to come and you need to pray at one of these altar areas over on either side. And you need to just connect with God Himself. Because maybe you found yourself in a moment where you were like, God, this is not what I anticipated. But maybe it's in the unexpected things that He's been doing the work. And you just need to surrender to say, God, wherever you want me to go, I will obey. I will go. No matter how unsettled I may feel, uncertain I may feel, that I would choose to walk the journey out with Him. And you would choose that today. Let's pray.